And the microphones are on.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This is a hearing of the Committee of Adjustment for the Town of Pelham. Everyone present will be given an opportunity to comment on the applications being heard. Please address your comments and questions through the chair. This public meeting has been called to satisfy the requirements of the Planning Act and Council bylaws. Notice of this meeting has been given by prepaid first-class mail to all persons listed as owners in the last revised assessment roll within 60 meters, 200 feet, of the subject properties. In addition, a public notice sign or two have been posted on the lands. Agencies commenting on the applications may request that certain conditions be imposed should an application be approved. Voicing objections to these conditions will not adversely affect the committee's decision. The process. The purpose of the application and relative correspondence will be heard, following which the applicant will be given an opportunity to address the application. Any person concerned with the application will then be given an opportunity to speak. Please state your name and mailing address for the record. At the conclusion of the discussion, the committee will render a decision and advise of any applicable conditions. Specific wording for the conditions will be determined by the committee following the public portion of this hearing. All interested parties are invited to be present. Copies of decisions will be mailed to the applicant or agent and to any other person who files a written request. There are colored pages and forms for this purpose which are available on the back table. Please fill them out if you want a copy of the decision. Any person, corporation, or public body has the right to appeal either the decision itself or the conditions of consent to the local appeal body within 20 days of the decision for minor variances and within 20 days of the mailing of the decision for consent applications. I'm going to introduce the hearing panel. To my far left is Bernie Law. To my near left is John Clausen. Does any member of the panel have pecuniary interest in accordance with the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act in any of the applications be considered at this hearing? Bernie? Any conflicts of interest?
No, sir.
I do not. Madam Secretary, have there been any requests for withdrawal or adjournment?
No, through you, Mr. Chair, no, there has not. We do respectfully request to hear applications A3/2019, A15/2019, and A16/2019 to be heard first prior to the Stella Street applications, and further to hear the Stella Street applications for consent prior to their minor variance applications.
Does anybody, do we all agree to that change of the agenda? Okay, let's, oh, by the way, I have no pecuniary interest in any of the applications.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
We'll start with application A3, 2019, 245 Far Street, Town of Pelham. Madam Secretary, you read the correspondence, please.
Thank you. Committee of Adjustment hearing, Wednesday, June 5th, 2019. Please note, no decisions have been made prior to this public meeting. This presentation is based upon the Town of Pelham's Planning Department report and analysis. All comments received from commenting agencies and the public have been forwarded in full to the Committee of Adjustment members for their consideration. Application for minor variance, file A3/2019P, 245 Far Street. Excerpts from Planning Report. The subject land is located on the east side of Far Street, lying north of River Road, known municipally as 245 Far Street in the Town of Pelham. The minor variance application requests relief from Section 7.4F, minimum side yard, seeking 4.5 meters, whereas 9 meters is required. To date, the following comments have been received. Building Department. All necessary permits are required prior to construction commencing. Public Works. The applicant must apply for a driveway entrance and culvert permit prior to gaining driveway access from the town right-of-way. Niagara Region Planning and Development Services. The submitted septic system design is acceptable and we offer no objections. The drainage concerns will be addressed at the time of the septic permit application. Public. No comments have been received.
You ready? Keep going.
Is the variance minor in nature? Reducing the side yard setbacks is minor in nature because adequate information is now available to qualify the degree of impact this development may generate. No negative impacts are anticipated for the subject land or neighboring property. Is the variance desirable for the development or use of the land? Reducing the side yard setback is desirable for the land because it will encourage the dwelling to be located further away from the septic bed. Does the variance maintain the general intent and purpose of the official plan? Reducing the side yard setbacks will not compromise the intent of the official plan, specifically the policy objectives of A2.1.2. Town planning staff are of the opinion the variance maintains the intent of the official plan policy objectives. Does the variance maintain the general intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw? Reducing the side yard setbacks to accommodate a wider dwelling maintains the general intent of the zoning bylaw insofar as large buffers are maintained between the neighboring parcels. The original Committee of Adjustment meeting scheduled to hear this application was Thursday, February 7th, 2019. However, due to the lack of regional support regarding site drainage and septic system design information, the hearing was adjourned. The Niagara region has now provided revised comments, and they no longer object to the minor variance approval, but will address the balance of their drainage concerns at the septic permit application stage. Planning staff is of the opinion that the application meets all 4 minor variance tests laid out by the Planning Act. The application is consistent with provincial policies, the regional official plan, and conforms to the general intent of the town's official plan. Planning staff recommend that application file number A3/2019P be granted, subject to the following conditions. That the applicant obtain approval for a septic system permit to be issued by the Region of Niagara. To obtain all necessary entrance and culvert permits to the satisfaction of the Director of Public Works prior to gaining access from the town right-of-way. That all necessary building permits must be obtained prior to construction commencing.
Is there anyone in the audience that wants to speak to this particular application? Or the owner want to come and give us any comments that you may have?
My name's Harold Hyde. I'm the agent for the owner.
Please come forward and sit beside Curtis Thompson, our planner.
Okay. My name's Harold Hyde from Rash and Hyde Surveyors. I'm acting as the agent on behalf of the owner. I don't really have any comments to make. I just I'm available if you have any questions, I suppose.
Members, or do you have any questions of the representative?
No, the only comment, I gather you need this revised setback so you can build a bigger house. That's correct?
I mean, essentially that is true, yes.
I mean, you could revise the plan and not have to have a setback requirement
The
too, right?
setback requirements for that lot are 9 meters on both sides, so you basically would be, because of the zoning, would be looking at building a tunnel or something that's very long and narrow, and to accommodate the septic, the same applies, so.
But this isn't an acre lot though, or is it half an acre?
I believe the area is on that plan somewhere. I can't see it from here,
Right.
but I don't have that information from
I was looking at half,
the documents say that it's 0.7 of an acre. I take that to be true. We're working in metric, so I don't know. On that.
Yeah, 0.69.
Yeah, it's 0.7 of an acre.
0.7 an acre.
Right.
I thought you had to have an acre.
For a building permit, you need an acre.
No, to be,
But see, the variance is related to the setback. We can't really comment. The property's already existing, Mr. Clausen.
I'm fine. I just found it unusual, that's all.
I find it unusual too.
I'm sorry, I'm not following the conversation.
Okay,
If
one
you're
of the,
directing it to me,
Mr. Clausen inquired, it's only 0.7 of an acre, which is less than an acre, and in the past, we've always looked at them being at least an acre in size.
Right.
But this is already an existing lot of record, so we can only deal with the variance. We can't deal with the creation of the lot because it's already there.
Correct. Oh, that's my understanding of the law.
Well, and the region has supported it, so,
Yeah, and I only have one small problem. I was out there the other day, and of course, there's a pond right in the middle of the lot, approximately where you're going to build the house. Drainage is quite imperfect, and it looked to me like the owner to the north, at one time, there was kind of a natural swale that went through his property, but it looks like
Something has, I definitely agree
something
with
has
you.
changed on his property that has precluded drainage from your property going to the drain.
That's correct. Nothing goes through that property from the south to the north, or from the north to the south. There is like an existing
Yeah.
hump along that north boundary right now. And I don't know if that was always like that since we started working on the site. When nothing
Well, I think
changed.
since you've been there, because when I was out there, I looked and there is kind of a driveway that goes along the northerly neighbor's south property line that looks like it was man-made versus.
Yeah, I agree with you, and there's a culvert under that driveway there as well, but nothing's flowing through it.
No.
And we saw that, but there is a bit of a low spot in the middle there, but I think, when the houses are built, it's gonna be all.
So you intend, the majority of the drainage from that lot's going to head toward the ditches on Far Road, I would assume? Okay.
no further questions.
My only question is that, at the moment, it's raw land. And, the minimum side yard requirements are 9 meters. If allowed, 4.5. When the fellow comes in next door and decides to build a house, and then he wants to build his with the same requirements, 4.5, then you're gonna have two buildings in the country only like 9 meters apart, which is not contrary to all the other houses in the area.
I don't disagree with your comment, but I think the quirk of this situation is that those three particular lots and others are existing lots of record. And they sort of have what is, forgive the term, but an inappropriate zoning for what they are. And that's, it is what it is, so we have to deal with it. I get that, and we all understand that. So we're trying to build, like a reasonable house to accommodate a family and all those other things while also dealing with the zoning requirements. I mean, I understand what you're saying. I don't disagree with you. But essentially, those are sort of small rural lots or large city lots, if you want to call them that, but they're neither really. So we're sort of stuck in the middle and trying to deal with it best we can.
I have one more question. Have you done a site grading plan? You're gonna have a tile bed there. You can't have water running over it. You gotta somehow take care of the water. And the region said that they're gonna look at it when you apply for the septic system. So, the way I read it, you really haven't done a lot grading plan. You're gonna do something once you apply. That's when it's gonna be invoked, a requirement for lot grading. Is that correct?
Well, with due respect, that's not totally correct. We do have a detailed grading plan, and they have seen it. That's not it. We did submit it to the township because that septic field has been pushed to the back, and we do have a grading plan that shows French drains coming around the whole thing and taking the water to the ditch on Far Street. But that, regardless of that, is going to be part of the process at the permit stage. Like, they're not going to issue a permit unless the grading is satisfactory, so, and which is, I believe, in the comments from the. So, I mean, we do have a different concept or grading plan than what you see in front of you there, but it's, you know, it's sort of essentially more or less the same, but it does provide more details, and the water is going to be directed to the ditch along Far Street.
My only comment is, I mean, you've got less than an acre, you're building a building, and it's gonna have less setback. You gotta direct water from front back, and, we may not have a problem now, but we might be introducing a problem later. I think Bernie alluded to that, the next guy that comes next door or whatever. That's my only concern, but if the region has no problem, well, then it's their problem.
As I drove around the area, I noticed that all of these homes have got nice side yards. And somehow or other, these smaller lots slip through the cracks, being only like 100 feet in width. And with a, like we're taking away 18 meters basically on both sides to accommodate the house, to accommodate the bylaw. And once again, if another house is built next door and asks for the same thing, we're gonna have subdivision-style houses in a rural area on septic beds. And you know the horrors we've got with those already in the community. We have too many septic beds and they're too close, and then if people have drilled wells, we're looking for further problems down the road. So,
Well, I don't disagree with your comments, but again, it's sort of the reality of the situation that we have. The zoning is for an agricultural zone. Like, even if that lot was the corner lot, you could have an 8-meter setback for the corner, which is strangely different than the side yard setback for an interior side yard. But it is what it is, and we're just trying to accommodate building like a normal house on that lot. And the other lots adjacent to it are in fact going to be the same thing.
could we accommodate a smaller size house going lengthwise?
I'm not the builder or the owner or the developer or the architect. I'm not sure.
Well, I think that's the concern. I agree with we've got a minimum side yard requirement of 9 meters. Now you're requesting 4.5?
That's correct, and the reason for that is, again, it's my opinion that the zoning in that particular area is sort of contrary to the lots that exist there. I mean, anywhere else, those would be considered very big lots, but I know, I get it, it's out in the country, they're not, or they're not big for out in the country, but, you know, it's sort of what we're stuck with and how we have to work with it.
So you would say that all of the other lots are of an acre or more?
I believe, I would have to look at the plan, but
Yeah.
I think the lot, it's not a plan of subdivision, as you know, the parcels or the lots on the west side of Far and on Weber, I think are somewhat bigger, yes, but I think they might be, the ones that I'm familiar with, maybe 150 feet of frontage. These ones are not. But they do exist, it is an existing lot of record.
Okay. No, I'm just looking down the road. I can potentially see issues coming with septic and water when we have such a small lot and narrow, and you're trying to make it, put a bigger house on a smaller lot.
That's true. I don't think it's, you know, it's not a outrageously huge house. It's not like 7,000 square feet. I don't know the exact number off the top of my head. I could get that number, but, you know, it's not a, you know, a massively huge house. I sort of just, these are the types of houses that people want to build and what they want to live in.
Are there any other comments? Just
If
for the record, there's, this whole area, Far Weber, has quite a history in planning. It was originally divided as a testimony divide. And that's why we have some of these kind of orphan lots out in the countryside, because they were divided through a will process. They weren't divided as part of a plan of subdivision, which we would normally see. So they are existing lots of record, and we have to deal with them the best we can. Are there any comments from the panel? Are we ready to make a decision?
Is there any comments, to the public, Mr.
Oh, any
Chair.
comments from the public? Yes.
Hi, my name is Irene Kirkhoven, and I live at 200 Far.
Okay.
And you asked about the water. It is a nice goose pond several times a year.
I beg your pardon?
That pond that you saw on the lot, it's been there for years. And it does have, the geese stop there regularly. So they are going to have a regular drainage problem there. And my concern from there is, again, you address the drainage as well as the size of the septic. I know that there's new septic systems out there. But again, the lot is smaller, and I understand, yes, you're trying to build a city home on a small country lot. My concern is what's going to happen to the septic and in the area from that. And I know you're not addressing septic, but more about how that's going to affect other people around it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comment. Committee members, any other comments, concerns? Are we ready to render a decision?
Well, based on our concern with the draining and that is being addressed by the region, and the region has stated that, and they've postponed it, so I don't think it's in our position to comment any further on that. So based on that, I would recommend that we approve this minor variance as written with the conditions as stated, and move on with it.
Do I have a second?
Well, only in line with the region recommendation that John alludes to, other than the fact that it's still a big house on a small lot, and we still have water issues, and we're gonna have sewage issues, and down the road, I think we're gonna be into another problem with the neighbors. So personally, aside from what the region has agreed to, I would not want to grant this on the size of this home on this lot.
Are we ready to take a vote?
May I have reasons read into the record?
Okay. You have to go through the list here, John.
Oh. What I wrote down here. Okay. First of all, I'm looking at it, the variance is minor in nature. And we're keeping the general purpose and intent of our zoning bylaws. And we have the intent of the official plan, that's the third one. The fourth one, the proposal is desirable for land as it allows proposed house to be built further from the septic bed. This application should be granted without prejudice in the town of Pelham. And, well, I don't know whether the young lady there made an objection or not, but the way I understand it, we didn't get any objections in writing or from any commenting agencies or abutting property owners. And the Committee of Adjustment considered written and oral comments, and I gather we did look at what the region had to say and agrees with the minor variance report analysis recommendation that the application meets the Planning Act tests for the minor variance. Now the conditions, the region has approved the septic system, so that is a condition. You're going to have to, you can't build or do anything unless the region, but they also have to approve the lot grading plan, and that is another condition. If the grading plan can't be met, then they shouldn't grant the minor variance.
Septic permit.
Yeah, or the septic permit. And that all necessary building permits from the building department are required to the construction commencing for the new building to the satisfaction of the chief building official. And also the you'll have to have a driving entrance and a culvert permit. It must be obtained prior to access from the town right-of-way. But the lot grading plan, the water situation, if the region has to, I can't stress that strong enough, that must be approved, and if they can't come up with one, then there will be no building.
Just as a suggestion, Mr. Clausen, could we add a fourth condition that the revised drainage plan be submitted and approved by the Town of Pelham Director of Public Works and Engineering concurrently with the issuance of the septic tank permit by the Region of Niagara?
Yeah, I'll go with that. I'll go with that.
Okay, can we
I
have,
am noting that down, Mr. Chair.
we're ready for a vote? All in favor? Carried. Your application has been granted. You have a few conditions to satisfy, but, and good luck. Next application. Unfortunately, it's gonna take a while. Next application we're gonna consider is application A15, 2019, 630 Kilman Road. Is there anyone here who wishes to represent the owners? Please come and join Curtis here at the table. Holly, would you please go through the application and report from the planning department?
Yes. Application for minor variance, file A15/2019P, 630 Kilman Road. Excerpts from planning report. The subject land is located at the southwest corner of Kilman Road and Cream Street, known municipally as 630 Kilman Road. The minor variance application requests relief from Section 7.7D, max accessory building height, seeking 5 meters, whereas 3.7 meters is permitted. To date, the following comments have been received. Public Works. If the driveway for the proposed accessory building changes locations, an entrance permit will be required. Building Department. A building permit is required prior to construction commencing. Niagara Region Planning and Development Services. Based on the proposed site plan, the accessory building/carriage house would require the installation of its own private sewage system, for which a septic permit is required. Public. One public comment was received by the owners of 591 Kilman Road, whom have noted they have no objections. Is the variance minor in nature? Increasing the accessory building height is minor given the rural context. No negative impacts are anticipated by the adjacent neighbors. Is the variance desirable for the development or use of the land? The variance is desirable for the property as it allows for enhanced storage and personal use of the property. Does the variance maintain the general intent and purpose of the official plan? The variance is appropriate given the site's rural context and meets the general intent of the town's official plan policies. Does the variance maintain the general intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw? Ample amount of open space is available on the site. Thus, the increased height will not adversely impact the agricultural character of the area or the surrounding countryside. Planning staff is of the opinion that the application meets the 4 minor variance tests laid out by the Planning Act. The subject application is consistent with provincial policies, the regional official plan, and complies with the general intent of the town official plan and zoning bylaw. Planning staff recommend that the application file number A15/2019P be approved. The following conditions are suggested. All necessary building permits are required prior to construction commencing to the satisfaction of the chief building official, and no additional plumbing fixtures other than those required for 1 washroom as per the supplied floor plan be installed within the proposed accessory building at the time of building permit.
Oh, and do you wish to offer any comments, sir,
Sure.
relative to the application?
Do you want my name and,
Yes, please.
so my name's David Tucker, I'm with Tucker Homes, and, I'm here for answering questions, but essentially it's to construct a carriage house or accessory building on the property. The carriage house will be set back from the road and placed in a location that is not visible from the neighbors that are across the street due to placement of trees. in the area, as well as, it's a home that is, it's a accessory building that's complementary to the existing home, in terms of its style and size, but it's smaller, and, given the size of the property, it seemed an appropriate size to increase the height, and, other than that, it meets all the other requirements of the zoning bylaw.
Any questions from members of the committee?
I have a
Mr.
question.
Clausen.
Through the chair, when I was there, I see the sign is in the wooded area, and I'm looking at it. Are you asking for a minor variance to build an accessory building in the wooded area? As I drove further west, I see the house, and then I see a driveway. And I'm looking here at the drawing. Looks like you want to build it west of the existing house, not east of the existing house.
That is correct.
Yeah, my review of the property would, I think it would lend some beauty to the property, and it would be a value to have the building built specifically to handle the products that you're going to be storing in it. So I would agree with the proposal.
This is the carriage house. I notice this is a very nice piece of property. It's really a residential piece of property. I don't see it ever becoming agriculture. I do see in the planning report, minor variance test number 3, the proposed use of the building as a single detached house is permitted in the specially agricultural designation of the official plan. And the policy does permit uses which are compatible with agriculture. I find this carriage building structure garage a little beyond agriculture. To me, it looks like it could become a granny shack very easily. I noticed also in the planning report, there was some suggestion made by the planning department that the accessory building, normally in a farm setting, it's a garage and it's usually close beside the existing house. This is some 80 meters away, so I'm having a little difficulty gauging the accessory building designation or carriage house. I'm fearful that it will become a granny shack at some time in the future. And normally in the town of Pelham, we don't allow 2 habitable houses on the same piece of property. Or that has been my understanding since the original zoning bylaw was put in place. With regard to the variance itself, I have no objection. My concern is related to the positioning of the carriage house on the property and the necessity to have a septic system installed concurrently with it. I also saw in the report from our Public Works Department that if you're going to change the driveway because you're going to move the building, you'll need a new entrance permit for that. Also in the planning report, yes, it would be nice if we could have a walkway or something between the house and the carriage house, but that's entirely up to the builder. That's not relative to the variance application. Is there anyone from the public that wished to comment on this? If you went out now to look at the property, you might understand why I'm a little bit concerned. Are there any other questions or comments from members of the panel?
I'll make one comment. He could build the building without a minor variance. Is that correct?
It would have to change.
I'm just saying, if you just built the normal height, didn't ask for this minor variance, you could put a building, just go to the planning department, go to the building department and get a permit and put up the building, correct?
Correct.
So all we're discussing is the height.
That's correct. Are we ready to render a decision? Do I have a mover and a seconder?
I move that we accept.
Okay. You have a seconder.
I'll second it.
Mr. Clausen seconds it. All in favor?
No, we gotta read
Oh.
the reasons. Did you write anything down? No.
We're granting this application based on,
Okay, the variance is minor in nature given the rural context. The general purpose and intent of the zoning bylaw is maintained. The intent of the official plan is maintained. The proposal is desirable for the appropriate use of the land as it allows for personal storage and flexibility. The application is granted without prejudice to any other application in the town of Pelham. No objections were received from commenting agencies or abutting property owners. The Committee of Adjustments considered the written and oral comments and agrees with the minor variance report analysis and recommendation that this application meets the Planning Act test for minor variance. The above decision is subject to the following conditions. All necessary building permits are required prior to construction commencing to the satisfaction of the chief building official, and no additional plumbing fixtures other than those for the one washroom as per the supplied floor plan be installed with the proposed accessory building at the time of the building permit.
all in favor? Granted. Okay. Next application we will consider will be application A16-219, 970 Weber Road. Is there anyone here willing to speak to this particular application? State your name and address for the record, please.
Mike Bettiel, owner of Merriman Homes.
Okay.
Okay. Application for minor variance, file A16/2019 P 970 Weber Road. Excerpts from planning report. The subject land is located on the southwest side of Weber Road, lying east of Victoria Avenue, known municipally as 970 Weber Road. The minor variance application requests relief from Section 7.7A, max accessory lot coverage, seeking 2.3%, whereas 1% is permitted. Section 7.7B, minimum accessory side yard, seeking 1.25 meters, whereas 3 meters is permitted. And Section 7.7D, max accessory building height, seeking 5.64 meters, whereas 3.7 meters is permitted. To date, the following comments have been received. Public Works, no comments. Building Department, a building permit is required prior to construction commencing. Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority, no objections. Niagara Region Planning and Development Services, drainage is poor in this area, and the final lot grading and drainage plan must be addressed prior to any building permits being issued. No objections, provided that an updated lot grading and drainage plan be submitted, including the new garage with the septic system application. Public, no comments were received. Is the variance minor in nature? Increasing the accessory building lot coverage to 2.3% is minor overall given the amount of landscaped open space available on the property. Increasing the accessory building height to 5.64 meters is minor, subject to conditions, given the rural context. Reducing the minimum side yard from 3 meters to 1.25 meters may not be considered minor given the site context which experiences poor drainage conditions. Is the variance desirable for the development or use of the land? The variance request to increase accessory building lot coverage provisions and increase the accessory building height is desirable for the property as it will allow for enhanced storage and use of the structure. Reducing the minimum side yard setback for the proposed accessory building is considered desirable for the property as it will maximize the usable land in the rear yard for amenity space. Does the variance maintain the general intent and purpose of the official plan? The proposed use of the building accessory to a single detached house is permitted in the good general agricultural designation of the official plan, and the policy does permit uses which are compatible with agriculture. The increase in accessory building height will not compromise the objective of the official plan, subject to conditions. Increasing the accessory building lot coverage does not impede the private servicing capability and the septic system and does not raise any issues with the official plan policies, subject to conditions. The requested side yard setback application was not accompanied by any demonstrated need on the basis that the subject zoning provision is not warranted, causes undue hardship, or is otherwise impossible to comply with policy E1.5. On these grounds, planning staff are of the opinion the variance conflicts with the policy objectives of the official plan. Does the variance maintain the general intent of the purpose of the zoning bylaw? The size of the proposed accessory building's height to 5.64 meters is appropriate given the rural context, subject to conditions. Ample amount of open space is available on the site for amenity areas and general storm drainage. The proposed increase of accessory building lot coverage won't compromise the new septic system's operational needs, subject to conditions. Given this, both variances will not adversely impact the rural culture of the area or the surrounding countryside and will not compromise the zoning bylaw intent. The proposed side yard setback reduction does not maintain the general intent of the zoning bylaw because the agricultural zones are intentionally meant to provide for larger degrees of separation between neighbors given the rural context. Planning staff is of the opinion that the application can satisfy the proposed conditions, then part of the application will meet the 4 minor variance tests laid out by the Planning Act, be consistent with the provincial policies, the regional official plan, and conform to the general intent of the town's official plan and zoning bylaw. Subject to conditions, the authorization of the minor variance is not expected to generate negative impacts for adjacent uses or the community at large. Consequently, planning staff recommend that application file number A16/2019P be approved as follows. Section 7.7, requirements for building and structure accessories to dwellings. A, maximum lot coverage 2.3%, approve. B, minimum side yard 1.25 meters, refuse. D, maximum height 5.64 meters, approve. The following conditions are suggested: that necessary building permits be obtained prior to construction commencing. At the time of the building permit, provide redesigned garage elevation plans that contribute more positively to the public symmetry and private realm through the use of window proportionations to the building's mass, as well as a more congruent use of exterior cladding, to the satisfaction of the Director of Community Planning and Development. Provide the region of Niagara with an updated lot grading and drainage plan to the satisfaction of the Niagara Region Planning and Development Services. At the time of building permit, provide an updated lot grading and drainage plan to the satisfaction of the Town Director of Public Works.
Do section 7B, minimum accessory side yard?
Yes.
Okay, do you have any comments to make with regard to the report prepared by our planning department, sir?
Yes. So currently, we're building a new home at 974, a couple that are retiring. The purpose of this building is so they can put their RV vehicle in that garage. In anticipation of hopefully getting our application through today, we've moved the septic bed from the rear of the property to the front of the property, and that's already been done and approved. The home is basically built and finished, and hopefully to make things a little easier, when I initially went in to ask about the requirements for setbacks for such a garage, I thought I was told it was 1.25 meters. That's not an issue at all. I mean, I can adhere to the 3 meters, no problem. if the other two are the height and the coverage are granted. So where they refused on the 1.25, I can definitely go back to what's already allowed, the 3 meters for the side yard setback.
Any questions, members of the panel?
Through you, I saw that you've got a lot of fill to put in the front. I assumed that was going to be the septic system there.
It's being done right now other than today.
And yeah, I can see it from your drawing, you can easily move the garage over 1.75 meters. It's not going to affect much at all.
Not at all.
Okay, that's all I have.
That was my main concern. Question about drainage, but I think you've answered it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Do we have a mover and a seconder for this application? Oh, anybody in the audience? I keep forgetting about the audience. I know you're all here for 36 Stella, but it doesn't matter. Do you have any comments with regard to this application? Being no comments, do I have a mover and a seconder?
I move that we accept this application. Yeah, for application relief.
Do you have a seconder?
No, yeah.
He's not finished.
Oh, you're not finished?
What I'm saying here, we're approving the maximum height and the coverage, those two items. And we're granting them for one, the variance is minor in nature, two, the general purpose and intent of the zoning bylaw is maintained. The intent of the official plan is maintained. The proposal is desirable for the appropriate use of the land as it allows for personal storage and flexibility. The application is granted without prejudice to any other applications in the town of Pelham, and there's been no objections were received from any commenting agency or abutting property owners. And the Committee of Adjustment considers the written and oral comments and agrees with the minor variance report analysis and recommendation that this application meets the planning test for minor variance. Now, there are some conditions. The above is subject to the following. You have to satisfy the chief building official, so you're going to have to take all the necessary building permits prior to construction of the accessory building. I see you've already got the house up. And to the another one, to the satisfaction of the Director of Community Planning and Development, that a redesigned garage elevation plans that contribute more positively to the public and private realm through the use of windows symmetrically proportioned to the building's mass, as well as more congruent use of exterior cladding. That is, avoiding the use of different cladding materials per facade, but submitted and approved. The building, what you've built, the house looks pretty good. I mean, you don't want to have like a plywood exterior or whatever, same quality.
Yeah,
as,
no.
Okay. 3, and to the satisfaction of Public Works, again, this is coming up steadily. Before you get the building permit, you have to submit a lot grading and drainage plan to the satisfaction of Director of Public Works. Okay, so that you show that. And also to the satisfaction of Niagara Region and Planning and Development Service, you also submit an upgraded grading and drainage plan to the satisfaction of the Niagara Region Planning and Development Services. Now that's
Granted.
granted. The other one, we will, as the gentleman says, he can move the building, so I don't think there's a problem with us refusing to grant him the 1.25 meter setback. The setback has to stay at 3 meters, because the variance is not minor in nature, as there are current drainage issues, and the general purpose and intent of the zoning bylaw is not maintained. The intent of the official plan is not maintained, and there's no demonstrated need or undue hardship. So we've discussed that. The proposal is desirable for the appropriate use of the lands as it allows more amenity space. The application is refused without prejudice to any other application in the town of Pelham, and the Committee of Adjustment has considered the written and oral comments and agrees with the minor variance report analysis. and recommendation that this application for reduced, doesn't meet the Planning Act test for minor variance.
So moved.
Do we have a seconder?
Second.
All in favor? Carried. You can build your accessory building, just make sure you get all your building permits and drainage area plans and all things are.
Have a good day.
Okay.
The next application we'll deal with, before we do 36 Stella, is application A 17-219, 210 Far Street, Pelham. Is there anyone here in the audience that's wishing to speak to this particular application? Please state your names and addresses for the record.
My name is Pat Carluccio. I'm with New Terra Homes, or 1907630 Ontario Lane.
The agent?
I'm Andy
Yeah,
Neal,
agent.
representing the same company. We're the project managers for the property owners, Dylan and Lauren Parnell.
Okay. Madam Secretary, would read the report, excerpts from the report from the planning.
Application for minor variance, file A17/2019P, 210 Far Street. Excerpts from planning report. The subject land is located on the west side of Far Street, lying south of Weber Road, known municipally as 210 Far Street. The minor variance application requests relief from section 7.4F, minimum side yard, seeking 8.5 meters southerly side yard, whereas 9 meters is required. To date, the following comments have been received. Public Works, no comments. Building Department, a building permit is required prior to construction commencing. Niagara Region Planning and Development Services. The submitted septic system design is acceptable, and we offer no objections. The drainage concerns will be addressed at the time of the septic permit application. Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority. No objections. Suggest that the town receive a formal lot grading and drainage plan at building permit stage to ensure drainage across the site is maintained. Public. No comments were received. Is the variance minor in nature? Reducing the side yard setback is minor in nature, as the impact yielded from a 0.5 meter side yard setback reduction in a rural area for a single detached dwelling has marginal impacts on stormwater runoff, privacy, and rear yard amenity area. Is the variance desirable for the development or use of the land? Reducing the side yard setback is desirable for the land because it will encourage the dwelling to be located further away from the septic bed. Does the variance maintain the general intent and purpose of the official plan? Reducing the side yard setbacks will not compromise the intent of official plan. Does the variance maintain the general intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw? Reducing the side yard setback to accommodate a wider dwelling maintains the general intent of the zoning bylaw insofar as those large buffers are maintained between the neighboring parcels. Planning staff is of the opinion that the application meets the 4 minor variance tests laid out by the Planning Act. The subject application is consistent with provincial policies, the regional official plan, and complies with the general intent of the town official planning zoning bylaw. Planning staff recommend that application file number A17/2019P be granted subject to the following conditions. The following conditions are suggested. All necessary building permits are required prior to the construction commencing to the satisfaction of the chief building official, and provide a detailed lot grading and drainage plan with the septic permit application, and obtain approval of the same to be issued by the Region of Niagara.
Do the members have any questions for the applicants? I've reviewed both properties. Fortunately, 210 and 245 Far Road are actually almost opposite each other. I noticed that there was quite a drainage swale through the front yard of the property. And according to the application, this is where you were intending to put the septic bed. Don't think it's going to work there. I would also, as a condition, like to see a condition added that the lot grading and drainage plan be submitted to the Director of Public Works and Engineering of the Town of Pelham for his review and approval prior to the issuance of the building permit. I have, with regard to the variance itself, the reduction of the side yard setback, I have no adverse comments to make. Any other comments from members of the panel? Are there any members of the public that wish to comment on this particular application? Yes.
Michael Blake, I wrote a letter to you about this.
Is this, which application are we dealing with?
I'm not sure. It says 36.
Currently,
No,
we're currently dealing with application A17, which is a 210 Far Road in the town of Pelham. Okay? No, don't worry, no problem. Is there anyone in the audience wish to make a comment on this application?
Phyllis Kirkhoven, 200 Fire Street.
Could you please come and speak into our little microphone beside Mrs. Pizzato?
Phyllis Kirkhoven, 200 Far Street. We live next door to this lot. As you mentioned earlier, it is a testorial lot, and it was divided between the children in dribs and drabs of crazy shapes. My daughter bought this lot right when they were first mentioned. There was an opportunity of reorganizing the site plan, but apparently the heirs couldn't agree on what was going to happen. The people that own this property in question tried to sell part of it to my daughter and to the other landowner because they have an acre and a half. There is a solution to this in that to make this an acre, the new owners of that property could actually buy some of the property from the people to the other side because they have a little too much. If they were willing to do that. I don't know if they are. But there are other solutions, and I do believe that in this particular area, you do need 1 acre of septic land. It's got, well, particularly this year, it's got quite a few ponds in it.
Thank you very much for your comments. Are there any other comments? With that being said, are we ready to render a decision?
What were the Regent's comments on the water on the pond, or the drainage for the septic?
Okay. The region actually requesting that prior to the issuance of the building permit, a septic tank permit be obtained from the region of Niagara, and as part of that, they're going to the region is going to be looking at the drainage problems also relative to the issuance of the septic tank permit. My comment is that I think the town of Pelham's Director of Engineering and Public Works should also look at that particular lot grading and drainage plan concurrently with our building department and the region of Niagara.
yeah.
Should be,
And I look at it's 4,012 square meters, the area of the lot, and that's pretty close to an acre. If you take 10.78 square feet to a square
getting
meter,
close.
you multiply that times that, and you get pretty close to 43,000 square feet.
So relative to the variance, do I have a mover and seconder with regard to the variance application?
Yeah, I'll move that we grant the variance. We're only looking at half a meter there.
no, second.
No, and then the variance is minor in nature. The general purpose and intent of the official plan is maintained. The intent of the official plan is maintained. The proposal is desired for the appropriate use of the land as it allows for the dwelling to be further from the septic bed. The application is granted without prejudice to any other application in the town of Pelham. We didn't receive any objections in writing from commenting agencies or abutting properties. We did have a comment from someone present. And we did hear you. The Committee of Adjustments considered the written and oral comments and agrees with the minor variance report analysis and recommendation that this application meets the Planning Act test for minor variance. Now, there are conditions. And the first one is you have to get all the building permits. There's no building there, and must satisfy the chief building official. And another one is submit a detailed lot and grading drainage plan with septic permit application and obtain approval of the same by the region of Niagara. But the third one is that this lot drainage also be given to our what do you call
Director
it?
of Engineering and Public
Yeah,
Works.
Director of Engineering, and that they have to agree to it too. So I move that way.
Do I have a seconder? All in favor? Carry, granted.
Thank you.
Okay.
Now,
The next application we're going to deal with is, we're going to deal with the applications for consent at B3, 2019, 36 Stella Street, and followed by B4, also 36 Stella Street, and B5. So we're going to deal with the consents prior to dealing with the variance applications, because without the consents being granted, there will be no variance.
now can I use the leave quickly, please?
Oh,
Recess?
we would like to take a short adjournment. We'll give Mr. Clausen 5 minutes.
I'm gonna go make sure he doesn't get lost.
Okay.
Thanks, Don.
Now we got to wait for the other one.
Wait till you get our age.
We are the same age. In fact, you might be younger than I am.
I don't know. I don't think so. Okay. That. Yeah, we're going through the Bs first, right?
Yeah, we're going to do application B3 first, and then B4. And B5.
Yeah.
Okay, we will reconvene at 5:04. The next application to be dealt with is file B3 2019P, 36 Stella Street, Town of Pelham. Application is made to consent to convey parts 3, 5, 6, and 7. And Holly, would you please go through the planning report?
Yes. Application for consent, file B3/2019P, 36 Stella Street. The subject parcel, shown as parts 3, 5, 6, and 7 on the attached sketch, has 25.71 meters of frontage on John Street, lying west of Stella Street, known municipally as 36 Stella Street in the town of Pelham. Application is made for consent to convey and partial discharge of mortgage of 626 meters squared of lands, parts 3, 5, 6, and 7, to create a new lot for single detached residential use and to establish an easement in perpetuity over parts 6 and 7 in favor of Bell Canada to protect existing buried telecommunication utilities. 801 square meters of land, parts 1 and 8, is to be retained for continued use of a single detached dwelling. Note, this application is being considered concurrently with consent file B4/2019P, B5/2019P, and minor variance files A10 to A12/2019P. To date, the following comments have been received. Bell Canada requires an easement in perpetuity over the lands to protect buried facilities that supply services to properties in the area. Building Department. A building permit will be required for any new residential dwellings. Public Works. That the applicant ensure that all lots are serviced with individual 200 millimeter water service, 20 millimeter water service, and 125 millimeter sanitary sewer lateral in accordance with Town of Pelham standards. Installation of any missing services will require permits obtained and approved by the Public Works Department. If existing services are proposed for reconnection, such services shall be inspected by the Public Works Department to determine if the services are satisfactory condition prior to connection. The provision for all services shall be completed through a temporary works permit prior to consent, and the applicants shall bear all costs associated with these works. That the applicant submits an updated drawing that indicates the location of the individual water service and sanitary laterals for all lots to confirm no existing water or sanitary services branch from or through the proposed lots to other lands, and from or through the remaining parcel to other lands. Locate cards for all lots shall be submitted after the installation of new services. That the applicant submit a comprehensive overall lot grading and drainage plan for all parcels to demonstrate that drainage does not negatively impact neighboring properties to the satisfaction of the Director of Public Works or his designate. During a site visit, it was noted that a pipe which looked to discharge water was extended past the side yard swale onto what would be parts 2 and 3 of the proposed plan. That the applicant obtain approval through a driveway, entrance, and culvert permit from the Public Works Department for the installation of entrances for all lots in accordance with town standards. Installations as well as removals of entrance shall be completed in accordance with town standards prior to consent and application, and the applicant shall bear all costs associated with these works. Following a site visit, it was identified that there are 4 trees missing from the plan submitted, 3 of them being town-owned trees located on Town Boulevard. A new plan will be required to be submitted showing the location of all trees and what are being proposed for them. A pipe exiting the basement wall of the recently constructed home at 36 Stella Street was discharging water beyond the southerly side yard swale onto what is proposed to be the new lots on the severance sketch. Public comments. Comments were received from Michael and Marion Whittaker. Listed comments were: placing another house on this lot is not keeping with the neighborhood, as lots along Stella Street have frontages of 14 meters. Lot frontages actually range from 18 meters to upwards of 25 meters. Diversity in lot size, and by extension dwelling size, is not necessarily a negative quality for any neighborhood. The proposed lot at the corner will project much closer to Stella Street and not align with other houses. No application has been made to reduce any zoning setbacks. Therefore, the building setback will be the same as the immediate neighborhood. However, if the severances are approved, the new front lot line would be the proposed corner lot would become John Street. Thus, Stella Street would be defined as an exterior side yard versus a front yard, and would have a building setback of 5 meters, not 7.7 meters. Therefore, there is no guarantee the builder would choose to orient the house at the minimum 5-meter setback, though it is a possibility. Visibility/traffic concerns for drivers on John Street and Stella Street. There are no inherent concerns with sight lines at these, as both are low speed, low volume, local roads with houses considerably set back from the traveled parts of the street. An all-way stop is needed at Stella Street and John Street to stop speeding traffic cutting through to Merritt Road. Town staff visited the site and spent over 15 minutes standing along John Street and Stella Street. Not one vehicle was witnessed during this window, and staff are not aware of any traffic concerns on Stella Street. Concern about potential loss of 2 mature trees on John Street frontage. Both of these trees are located on private property. Town staff desire as many trees be protected as possible, and are proposing an updated plan be submitted as a condition of severance, along with required driveway entrance permits so that tree protection can be enforced. Planning staff is of the opinion that the proposal applies current planning and development goals, dealing with the appropriate infill development, making more efficient use of the existing urban lands where suitable to do so. The proposed severance should not negatively impact the surrounding neighborhood with regards to land use compatibility, traffic, privacy, and stormwater runoff. In planning staff's opinion, the application is consistent with the provincial policy statement and conforms to the provincial, regional, and local plans. Planning staff recommend that the consent known as File B3/2019P be granted. The following conditions are suggested: that the applicant ensure each lot is serviced with an individual 20mm water service and 125mm sanitary sewer lateral in accordance with town standards. Installation of any service will require temporary works permits and to be obtained and approved by the Public Works Department. If existing services are proposed for reconnection, such services shall be inspected by the Public Works Department to determine their condition, determine if their condition is satisfactory prior to connection. The applicant shall bear all costs associated with these works. Submit an updated drawing indicating the locations of the individual water services and sanitary laterals for all lots to confirm no existing service branches from or through any proposed lot lines to other lands and from or through the remnant parcel to other lands. Locate cards for all lots shall be required after the installation of new services. Submit an updated drawing indicating the location of all missing trees and what is proposed for them following development to the satisfaction of the Director of Public Works. Submit a comprehensive overall lot grading and drainage plan for all parcels demonstrating that the drainage neither relies upon nor negatively impacts neighboring properties, and that all drainage will be contained within the respective boundaries of the new parcel to the satisfaction of the Director of Public Works. Obtain approval for a driveway entrance and culvert permit for all entrances for all lots issued through the Public Works Department to town standards. This includes the removal of existing entrance on John Street. The applicant shall bear all costs associated with these works. Obtain approval for the conveyance of a easement over the westerly limits of the subject lands to the benefit of Bell Canada for continued maintenance and protection of existing telecommunication infrastructure to the satisfaction of Bell Canada. sign the Town of Pelham Standard Memorandum of Understanding explaining that development charges and cash in lieu of the dedication of land for park purposes are required prior to the issuance of the building permit. Provide the Secretary Treasurer with a registrable legal description of the subject parcel together with a copy of the deposited reference plan if applicable for use in the issuance of the certificate of consent. The applications for consent, file B3/2019, receive final certification of the Secretary Treasurer concurrently with applications B4/2019P and B5/2019P, and provide the final certification fee of $387 payable to the Treasurer, Town of Pelham, be submitted to the Secretary Treasurer. All costs associated with fulfilling conditions of consent shall be borne by the applicant.
Are there any members here who represent the owners? Would you please state your name, address, and have a seat beside our planner, Mr. Curtis Thompson? Members of the panel, do you have any questions? Oh, better let these people give their names and addresses first.
Jennifer Vita from Upper Canada Consultants. I'm the agent for the applications before you.
I'm Mike Duffy, the owner of the property.
Members of the panel, are there any questions for the agent or the owner? Relative to the consent.
Yeah.
It's interesting when you read the file, and rules are rules, and we've got the region and the town to deal with. But we also have to deal with the residents of the community. And when I look at the letters from Mr. Whitaker and another one from Mrs. Whitaker, I read with passion that they don't want to see their neighborhood brought down into small subdivision style like we have elsewhere in the town, although there are other lots in the community of that size. So it's rather troubling to see that we would want to split that lot into two when maybe one lot would be great. It could serve both parties. It could serve the landowner and it would serve the other homeowners in the neighborhood. So truly in my opinion, the decision comes down to what you feel is right for that particular part of our community.
I'll have a comment. Curtis, I understand your report, but my question to you through the chair, do we ever consider the owners, their situation, considering that I know that the Dr. Whitaker and his wife have been there since 1975 or 74, when Mrs. Kunda developed the whole property and made certain lots. So you've got a number of people, and that was a lot made. Now what we're doing is redeveloping the lot. And these people want to live. Like he has a lot next to him, an acre lot. He could develop it, but he's chosen, he likes the lifestyle he has. Do you, in your assessment, consider how other people feel that have been there for many, many years?
Through the chair, absolutely. The challenging part is decisions in the planning realm have to be consistent with provincial, regional, and local policies. Planning staff often do alter their recommendations based off of not just agency and staff comments, but other public comments. In this case, part of what came out of that was the conditions surrounding the trees. So it does impact our recommendations, but decisions do have to conform and be consistent with legislation. So it's certainly a balancing act.
But through the chair again, but Curtis, we're talking something that was there as a lot to begin with. When we're talking development of something new or new development. We have existing. This lot was part of an existing 40 years ago. Now we're changing it and making it to what is today. And we have an owner that's very upset about that. And we've seen that, I've seen that sitting here a number of times. And as you know, I've already expressed my point of view on one application last year, there where Lou Macy lived, okay? And there were quite a few neighbors objecting. And what we've done is taken an old neighborhood and that was developed years ago and changing it into a new development. And I never got the feeling that these people were heard. That's my only concern. How do we balance that? That's the key.
Through the chair. When subdivisions are originally built, they're not necessarily meant to, neighborhoods aren't meant to just be bubble wrapped and stay stagnant forever. Communities and by nature cities are always evolving and always changing. So, I mean, I don't know how to pinpoint an answer on such a high level question like that, but cities are always changing. And further to that, there's a lot of growth that's underway in this part of Southern Ontario, and housing has to happen somewhere, and the province and by nature planners at different levels of government have are pretty firm in the belief and understanding that growth is not a zero-sum game. So whether it happens here, it happens somewhere else, it's happening somewhere. And if it's not accommodated within existing settlement boundaries as best as we can do it in a sensitive and compassionate manner, the next discussion leads to where are we going to sprawl out on the next farmland. And that's not particularly an easy discussion to have. So it's certainly a challenge.
I think then I'd like to hear from Dr.
Well,
Wilkin.
a couple of, indulge the chairman here for a minute, okay?
Sure.
The agent for the, Mr. Duffy, do you have anything to add to the planning report or comments thus far, or are you in agreement with what has been stated?
We're happy with the planning report, the recommendations, and we accept all the conditions that have been put forth by staff. I guess what we have to look at as planners is what is the greater good, the bigger picture for the larger community, but balancing with the impacts of one or two individuals. So we have to make sure that we're using municipal infrastructure and services that are existing within the municipality. So the more people we have using those services, the more sustainable they become long-term for the overall community, rather than, like what Curtis said, expanding urban boundaries, using agricultural land inefficiently, things like that. So we have to look within our urban boundaries for opportunities where we can make land, make the community more sustainable for the long term. So I think those are some of the goals that the province is trying to put forth to municipalities, to look for opportunities where land is currently underutilized, and from a planning perspective, this makes good planning sense.
Sir, Mr. Whitaker, do you want to have some comments? I did read your submission and that of your wife.
And then you covered everything that my wife and I said.
Please, we have to
Yes.
sit down, or
my wife can't be with me today because she's incapacitated at the moment, so that's unfortunate. But anyhow, you covered all the aspects of our letters, and I note on my letter I did say that the west side of Stella Street have frontages of 45 feet, which is incorrect. It's setback from the road. And my point was that if you're going to squeeze two homes into that piece of land, you're going to get the one in the southeast portion of that split is going to be much closer to Stella Street, and when you're coming down John Street, you're going to not have 45 feet to look down, but this one is going to project much closer to the road, and you're not going to see what we see today. And therefore, that's why I always felt there was some obstruction of seeing the cars that are going south on Stella Street. If you get my point.
Okay, so refresh my memory. Currently, Stella Street is the through street and John Street is the stop
It
street?
was a through street, but it is now. It goes through. You can either go down Vera or John onto Stella Street, and then that works its
Yeah.
way out to Merritt Road.
Okay, so basically, there is
cut
no, there's no stop condition at the intersection of John and Stella at the current time?
There's a stop for people on John Street.
On John Street, okay.
But in fact, I've lived there for 53 years. In fact, you mentioned it was 74 or 5. It wasn't. It was 1969 that we bought that lot and built our house there. And so we've watched what's happened in the area all those numbers of years. And the cars, even if you have sat people there to observe the traffic, I know that some traffic that flies by at a rate they should never be using. And I worry about young children that are playing on the streets and things. That's the only thing. Secondly, my concern was those two magnificent trees. One is a tulip tree, and I found that builders in the past don't respect trees. If a tree is in their way, they take it down. And this happened to us on behind our property when all the trees, most of all the trees, were removed as far down as Steve Bauer Trail. We built this house in the woods, and we like the woods, and that's why I have a spare lot at the side which is just woods. I love what grows in there, I'm never touching it. There's tulip, there's wonderful selection of trees, and in fact, that's why we keep it just empty. And so all those trees behind us were removed, and the lots were smaller, and the homes were larger, so they had to replace trees later with saplings. And then on the other event that happened across the road from us, there was a lot there that was divided and into two, and the builder built one home for himself, and then the other one was sold and another house built, which was fine. But in 2 to 3 years, that builder moved on, and that he didn't care really what happened. And I look at this and say, is this the same type of situation where the person who built the house that is there now on this lot is going to put 2 more homes on it, making 3 on the lot, which was only 1 home at one time. And then if they're left, then we're left to look at 3 homes squeezed onto one lot. It just that it was out of character with what we have around. That's all I was saying. And I'm very happy if there was only one house going there on that southern aspect of that divided lot.
Have any comments to make? Thank you, Mr. Whitaker.
Thank you.
I must admit, when I first looked at this, I said, this is overdevelopment. But then I read the planning report, and we are to increase our density. The town has, the new official plan has made specific comments relative to increasing density within 100 meters of our arterial roads. And unfortunately, one of our arterial roads is Pelham Street, and this property seems to fall within that definition. So looking at that, I said, okay, to myself, there had been a previous severances, and it was intended probably to only have two houses built, 2 lots, and maybe, I don't know if it was considered by Mr. Duffy at the time, to to sever the other portion, because he is now taking parts 2 and 3 from part 1, basically, to increase the size of the new lots 4 and 5, parts 4 and 5. At the end of the day, I think Curtis has answered our question, and I think the agent has answered our question. Unfortunately, we have to be aware of provincial policies and intensification and the use of our existing infrastructure to a better extent. And yes, it's going to have an impact on current residents. They're going to see some smaller size lots. But I think that's happening all over Ontario. And I'd like to think that we could have larger lots, but I think eventually, because of the planning policies of the province and what's in their official plan, looking at all that, I've come to the realization that this is probably not such a bad idea, provided we can protect the trees. And we know that traffic is a problem in the town of Pelham, and it doesn't matter whether it's 5 cars an hour or 20 cars an hour. Stop signs are not necessarily followed. So I recognize that there's an intersection at Stella and John. I just hope the residents that live on Stella and John start to obey the rules of the road. I can't guarantee that. I live on North Pelham Street, and they don't know what a speed limit is, okay? So enough said on that. With regard to the conditions, I've noticed in the conditions that we're talking about sanitary laterals on all lots. I would assume that this means both the lots being created and the remnant? Or should we add to the conditions that submit an updated servicing drawing for all lots, including the remnant? Would that be appropriate?
Remnant's already developed.
Yes. The may be developed, but I'm asking you to submit a drawing showing the location of the servicing of that part, what would be part 1. Maybe it has not been recorded properly.
I think we did it when we built the house, because we had to install those services when we did it.
I'm just asking that
Sure.
they be confirmed relative to this application. I'm also see there's a condition to submit an updated drawing indicating the location of all missing trees. And what is proposed, I'm going to like to add the wording, to protect them during and following development. There's another condition that says submit a comprehensive overall lot grading plan for all parcels. I would assume that all parcels means part 1 means the existing lot and the new lot, because you are changing the drainage patterns for the existing lots that we're actually severing up. So I'm saying including the remnant. And that would be adjacent lands also. I'm thinking that you should be, when you're developing your lot grading plan, you should go at least 5 meters inside the adjacent properties and see what's going on with their drainage, because you're going to have to look after that too, if it is heading toward your property. And I don't know, I can't tell I know there's quite a drop between Pelham Street and Stella, and has I guess it would be your westerly neighbor looked after his drainage, or are you catching it? Those are just some of the things that I'm more or less thinking of.
Through the chair, I have another additional, I think it should make sure that the 2 driveways aren't side by side. The driveways should be apart from each other. Okay, because the trees are going to dictate where the driveway is on the one, if we want to have the trees protected.
Well, I guess that's something that's going to have to be.
Put the driveway up by the other one up by the easement.
It actually could go in the easement if it's not a paved driveway.
Yeah, but and that way we won't have any problems in that aspect. But we want to make sure that the trees. I don't know if you've seen that tree like that.
Yeah, it's we don't want to see its roots damaged.
No.
And basically that's why I'm. Yes.
I've never been able to figure out which one is the tulip tree.
Tallest one.
Oh, it's from the corner. The corner tree is the twilight tree.
Nancy? Madam
Through you,
Secretary?
Mr. Chair, I would suggest that the driveway permits would be inspected by the engineering department to ensure firstly the safety of ingress and egress. So they will take all matters into consideration. They will receive a copy of this decision and the committee's request to protect the trees. But the driveway approvals would have to be in the best place firstly and foremost for safety of ingress and egress. So I believe our engineering department would certainly take the comments of the committee into consideration, but the final approval would be theirs.
So I guess my comment to Mr. Duffy would be cognizant of where the driveway and the garage is going to be located within the two houses you're proposing to build.
We'll get approval from the town before we design the house.
Yes, Mr. Whitaker?
I ask, therefore, you are going to try and protect those two trees.
I'm suggesting in the condition, one of the conditions that we are proposing is that, first of all, Mr. Duffy has to submit an updated drawing indicating the location of all the trees, including the missing trees that weren't shown on the site, on the sketch that we received.
I'm sure anybody who looks at those trees would say they're magnificent, you know.
And he's also going to have to, as part of his submission or condition, what is proposed for them following development. I'm adding what is proposed to protect them during and following development. Because my construction side comes in here and says, I've watched too many trees get damaged unnecessarily, which hasn't had an impact on them some years later, which in this particular case, because it's one of those very, I guess, extensive trees that we want to see it protected. Are there any other comments? Are we ready to look at a decision?
No, can I, I'd like to ask, can we make a comment for all three files at one time, or do we have to go through this with every file? I'm assuming if we agree to one, then we're agreeing to all of them?
I think we could probably look at the two applications as being concurrent, 3 and 4, but I'm thinking B5, B5 is the perpetual easement in favor of Bell Canada.
But
That may
we
have-
can't approve B4 and 5, 3 and 4
I think we could do,
without.
Madam Secretary, could
We
do
have
3 and
to
4
agree to
concurrently?
B5.
But I think we have to do 5 on its own because of perpetual easement.
Through you, Mr. Chair, the conditions and reasoning would be the same for application files B3 and B4. However, the conditions are significantly different for the
B5.
the right-of-way in perpetuity. So I would suggest respectfully through you, Mr. Chair, that 3 and 4 could be dealt with in one motion, but 5 should be a separate motion.
Thank you very much, Madam Secretary. Any other comments? Any further discussion?
Oh, I would move that we approve files B4 and B3 so that we consent to the convey parts 3, 5, 6, and 7, and then the partial discharge of mortgage of 626 square meters, and to establish, well, here it is, to establish an easement in perpetuity over parts 6 and 7 in favor of Bell Canada. Parts 1 and 8 is to be retained by one single residential dwelling. Now, we've based the decisions based on both parcels, we're just talking 3 and 4, that to the satisfaction of Public Works, we have to ensure that each lot is serviced to town standards, which is normally a building permit function. The applicant shall bear all costs associated with this. Submit an updated drawing indicating the location of individual water service, sanitary laterals for all lots. Locate carts for all lots shall be required after the installation of new services, which that's standard. That C, that we submit an updated drawing
locating of all missing trees and what is proposed for them following development. Not what's proposed for them, that these trees have to be kept alive until Mother Nature, whatever, takes care of them. It's not as if, I don't like to put a condition saying, well, we'll have to look at how he's gonna build, whether we're gonna tear the trees down or not. I would propose that the trees be kept. That's the way I wanna word it. Submit a comprehensive overall lot grading and drainage plan, seeing that you have the road with the slope, so that's gonna be very key. And that none of the parcels the drainage relies upon nor negatively impacts neighboring properties. And this will be also to the satisfaction of Director of Public Works. And you obtain approval for driveway entrance and culvert permit for all entrances for all lots. The applicant shall bear all costs associated with these works. Now, are we assuming that all these are coming on John Street, or is one on John Street and one on Stella Street?
This is why I'm saying including the remnant, because the remnant parcel, according to our drawing, in both cases is part one.
Yeah.
So to me, part one is the remnant. Part three gets added to part five, part two gets added to part four. That the easement goes across parts 6, 7, and 8.
But I don't think for us it's to say where he wants to locate the driveways.
No,
I
we
understand
can't.
that from Nancy and Mrs. Pizzato there. I think we leave that up to the planning department.
Well, we leave that up to the engineering department because they have to prove the culvert location.
Fine. So that the location of the driveways be approved by the
Yep.
Director of Public Works, not just, so that's what the approval. Okay, now the other part, to the satisfaction of the Director of Community Planning and Development, they sign, the owner signed with the town standard memorandum of understanding and final approval of all necessary minor variances. And to the satisfaction of the Secretary Treasurer, which is most important here, that the Secretary Treasurer be provided with a registerable legal description of the subject parcel, together with a copy of the deposited reference plan, and two, that the application for consent, that's B3 and 4, receive final certification from the Secretary Treasurer concurrently with applications. Well, okay, all of them have to be concurrent, 3, 4, and 5. And that the final certification of 387 be submitted to the Secretary. All costs associated with fulfilling conditions of consent shall be borne by the applicant. Now, isn't it $387 for each B3, B4, and B5, correct?
That's correct, through you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, so it's 3 times 387, okay.
Two now.
Well, yeah,
Five
2
is
now,
separate,
yeah, I just
okay?
want to make sure we get our money, that's all. Obtain approval for conveyance of perpetual easement over the western limits of the subject property to the benefit of Bell. That's very, very important there for Bell. Now, we've based these decisions on the following. The application is aware through written correspondence that application must satisfy the conditions listed above, items 1 to 4. The application conforms to the policies of the Town of Pelham Official Plan, Regional Policy Plan, Provincial Policy Statement, and complies with the town's zoning bylaws. So, I mean, you meet all the conditions, so the owner has a right to ask for what he's asking. 3, the decision is rendered having regard for the provisions of sections 51(2)(4), 51(2)(5) of the Planning Act, RSO as amended. And we have Committee of Adjustments. We had a good long look at this, consider all written and oral submission, and find that the subject conditions of provisional consent, this application meets the Planning Act criteria, is consistent with the provincial policy statement, and complies with the growth plan, the Niagara Regional Official Plan, and the Town Official Plan. So moved.
Mr. Mover, I'd ask for a couple of minor additions to your conditions. 1C, no, hang on a second, 1B, sanitary laterals for all lots, including the remnant parcel, be added to that sentence. Item C, submit an updated drawing indicating the location of all missing trees and what is proposed to protect them during and following development.
Well, I'm assuming that was.
I'm more worried about
Yeah.
during the development.
Yeah,
If they survive during the development, they should probably survive the post-development.
Well, one of the problems why I see trees die is when they dig the foundation, they load the dirt against the tree to make sure the tree dies.
Or when they dig the sanitary line or the water line.
Yeah, they cut all the lines, and that's why with the driveway.
That's right.
That's why. I don't know what we can do to save the trees or whether
We're going to try our best.
Fine.
Item D, submit a comprehensive overall drainage plan for our pulses, including the REM and demonstrating the drainage. And E, it's going to be the driveway permits for the lots being created because the existing lot probably already has a driveway, I hope. Nancy, any words of wisdom we can include?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, I would just be careful on the wording with regard to protecting the trees following development, recognizing that all of these conditions must be satisfied prior to the issuance of the certificate that actually creates the lots. So it may be such that they submit a plan on how they will protect the trees, but just so that the committee is aware, there is no ability for this condition to protect the trees during development and following development as a condition of the approval, but to submit the plan on how the applicant intends to protect the trees certainly would be an acceptable condition. It's just that once the certificate is issued, there is no mechanism to protect the trees anymore during and following development.
Okay. Maybe in that regard, it may be more beneficial that the owner undertake a quasi-site plan development agreement?
I know that there would be an opportunity for some sort of tree saving plan that they could work with the municipality. Perhaps the planner would have some input on that as well.
Could that ride on title? Could the plan,
That would be something I'd have to check with our legal counsel on. But certainly if, they would work with our planning department in that regard, who would probably also consult the region with regard to their tree bylaw. But the regional tree bylaw generally is more for broader areas or woodlots. This is not the case in this instance, Mr. Chair. So I just wanted to caution the committee that a condition being imposed on this application cannot anticipate the future because the condition has to be satisfied within that 1-year time frame.
okay, so maybe initially, it could be the development of a plan that would indicate, well, first of all, we got to do a new drawing showing the location of the missing trees. And then possibly a plan be prepared that would satisfy our condition, being that the plan to show how they're going to protect them, but that could ride a quasi-development agreement or just an agreement or an affidavit of some description saying Mr. Duffy is going to protect the trees, or it becomes a condition of the building permit.
Right, and our director of planning certainly would have insight into that. I just want to caution the committee from being too specific in the wording, saying that we're going to protect them in future development or in following development, because we won't have any authority.
No, we don't have
over
any
that.
say.
Through the chair, we have an arborist on staff for the town of Pelham. They come and look at trees and decide if you want to cut a tree down and it's on town property, you have to, or there's a problem, you have to bring this person in and they can make comment one way or the other. They also have the knowledge to know as to what can and can't be done around a tree during construction to make sure that, I've seen it, having been in the business where a guy intentionally just piled dirt over a tree, and we know what it does to a tree. You say, oh, I never thought of that, you know. But we do have an arborist that could be brought into this to check out to make sure. I propose that. Is that a possibility?
I mean, maybe it is, maybe we could ask Mr. Duffy or his agent what they think could be a possible remedy to our dilemma.
It's never our intention to cut down the trees. They're beautiful trees. We would like to keep them. But there are a lot of other issues.
What we've done in other municipalities with similar applications is what Nancy was saying, is prepare a tree preservation plan.
Okay.
Where the existing trees are identified, and then a plan is prepared on how those trees will be protected with buffering or fencing through the construction process to ensure that they are protected. That plan would get reviewed probably by your arborist to ensure that it will
So, that's fine.
I'm agreeable to that. Can we,
What she says is exactly what
Yeah.
I'm proposing.
Yeah.
That they put a plan in the arborist, if it says
That's
it's
right.
fine, it's fine.
Yep.
That's as far as we can go.
the arborist happens to work for the Director of Public Works, so it goes there anyway.
Fine.
Are we specifically concerned about these two trees on this property?
I'm not sure
There are other
which,
trees on the west property line that concern me.
okay, there are, Curtis, you're gonna have to help us with the tree situation.
And there's a tree in the middle of this property too.
Well, I guess it's the trees in the public right of way that really concern us more than,
Well, the only trees on the public right of way are the ones that are not on the drawing.
So the ones on the public right of way, the applicant doesn't have any control.
no, he
over
hasn't had any
those.
control.
They're municipal
So
trees.
Curtis, where are we at?
Through the chair, I think you can get that condition just modified, the one that we already have in there about regarding the trees, if you modify the wording on it to say something to the effect of, well, one, the trees that aren't shown are the town trees. Those are the adolescent trees. And then there's the two mature trees, which are entirely on private property, as you can see there, except for the drip line on the one tree there. But perhaps the condition could be reworded to the effect of that the updated drawing, and a lot of this can be shown, a couple of these conditions can be shown on the same plan, but showing the location of the proposed driveways, the proposed servicing laterals, and then perhaps the drip line of the tree to be protected during construction to the town of Pelham's Director of Public Works satisfaction, which would, the arborist would be the subordinate of the Public Works Department, so.
Mr. Duffy, would this be acceptable to you and your agent?
Try and do it. My concern is that tree is so huge, that how far does that drip line come out of the lot?
They're tulip trees.
The tulip tree specifically.
Yeah. Their root system isn't as extended. Correct me, Dr. Witter, if I'm wrong. The tulip trees, their root system isn't like the maple or one of them. It's a little, they're more of a confined root, if I'm.
No, that's a little bit deeper. Is that
Yeah.
right? Yeah. I don't know, but I know that there's always concern about tulip trees being protected, and they're part of the Carolinian forest, and you know, it's it goes. We've got a lot of tulip trees in this area, and I know that the township was anxious to encourage these trees.
I know from personal experience, you do not cut down a sassafras tree anywhere in southern Ontario under penalty of the Ministry of Natural Resources coming after you really hard and heavy.
I think Mr. Duffy understands our concern for the trees.
Yep.
So whatever it has to
So
be.
we can ensure the wording is correct. We'll work with both the Public Works
Okay.
Department and the Director of Planning, or the Planning Department, to ensure that the wording is something that is obtainable, and that the both departments are satisfied.
I forgot one question of Curtis I had to ask. When Mrs. Kunda developed that property, she had a requirement that all houses had to be architecturally designed and a certain size house. Is that, by the way, now? Is that not part of the development anymore? I'm just asking. I'm not trying to.
I'm not aware of any architectural control guidelines registered in that subdivision agreement, but I have to
Dr.
look at that.
No less than 2,200 square feet.
Yeah.
House. That was a
But I think that was a part of the offer of purchase, wasn't it? We had to sign an offer of purchase to that effect. Okay. He just answered my question. It was not on the land, it was, if you wanted to buy from Mrs. Kunda, she made you sign that you had to have 2,200 square feet.
A private agreement, the zoning doesn't
Nobody's
stipulate
for sure because I built 2 houses on Stella Street.
Yeah.
One closer to the school and then this one, so.
Okay. That's one thing Mr. Duffy can do this. If he wants to protect himself, offer a purchase, you got a certain kind of house you want in there. But that's up to you. Mrs. Kunda was very strong on that, let me tell you. That's why it looks nice in that area.
Do we have a seconder on that?
Do we have a seconder for the
Just
motion?
yet, I would like to say, in addition to the file, just for, so that Curtis, that you can take a look tomorrow, on Pelham Street, where the 3-story apartment building is, just across from where the grill restaurant is, right across the street on Pelham Street here,
on the north side of Highway 20.
on the west side of Pelham Street, north side of Highway 20, yeah. There's a great big huge tree right on the corner of the lot. Huge. It's dead. Dead. Beautiful tree. They preserved that tree. It's dead. So, whatever they did to preserve that tree, it didn't work.
Hold a second. Bernie, you're out of order. We're not, Bernie, we're out of order. We're dealing with the problem with the severance.
Okay, this is an
severance-
addition.
No, this has nothing to do with the agenda.
But you're
It's up-
asking,
After the meeting, you could speak with Curtis on this one,
but
okay?
is that too late?
No.
We got to vote now. You got
Okay.
to second what I said, or.
Bernie,
Okay, excuse me,
we're
through the-
dealing with the applications that,
Okay, the reason I'm bringing this to your attention is so that when Mr. Duffy is making the work on the property, that we don't do what we did to the tree here.
okay.
That's all I'm.
Basically, what's happened is we've come to the conclusion that we need a plan of how to protect the trees.
Correct.
And that's currently what's going to be a condition of the severance application. With that being said, I hope your concern is resolved. We're now ready to have a vote. All in favor? Carried. So that looks after applications B3 and 4. Now, B5 is the perpetual easement in favor of Bell Canada. To be quite honest, we better go through the,
Maybe we will protect all those trees?
we're not probably going to be worried about that on the easement. so
I don't
much.
know how they could get a wire in there. You should see how many trees are in there.
The wire was probably put in before the trees were there. I've got the same problem out on my property and
I'm ready to go whenever you
Yes.
are, Mr. Chair.
please read the finding report to their officers. Holly, thank you.
Application for consent, file B5/2019 P, 36 Stella Street. The subject parcel, shown as Part 8 on the attached sketch, has 17.52 meters of frontage on Stella Street, lying north of John Street, known municipally as 36 Stella Street in the town of Pelham. Application is made for consent to establish an easement in perpetuity over Part 8 in favor of Bell Canada to protect existing buried telecommunication utilities. 801 meters square of land, Parts 1 and 8, is to be retained for continued use of a single detached dwelling. Note, this application is being considered concurrently with consent file B3, B4 2019 P, and minor variance files A10 to A12 2019 P. To date, the following comments have been received. Bell Canada requires an easement over the lands to protect buried facilities that supply services to properties in the area. Building Department, no comments. Public Works, no comments. The proposed easement conveyance seeks to protect existing buried telecommunication cables while also protecting the surrounding properties from negative impacts by requiring no structures to interfere with the proposed easement. If the easement were not established, Bell Canada would have limited grounds to prohibit private landowners from building structures above the easement, thus interfering with the future maintenance of the corridor. In planning staff's opinion, the application is consistent with the provincial policy statement and conforms to the provincial, regional, and local plans. Planning staff recommend that the consent known as File B5/2019P be granted. The following conditions are suggested: that the applicant provide the Secretary-Treasurer with a registrable legal description of the subject parcel together with a copy of the deposited reference plan, if applicable, for the use of the issuance of the certificate of consent. That the application for consent, File B5/2019, receive final certification of the Secretary-Treasurer concurrently with applications B3 and B4 2019P, and to provide the final certification fee of $387 payable to the Treasurer, Town of Pelham, be submitted to the Secretary-Treasurer. All costs associated with fulfilling conditions of consent shall be borne by the applicant.
Members of the committee, any questions?
I would just move that we accept.
Any comments? Mr. Whitaker, any comment?
No.
Okay, I guess we're ready to render a decision. Can I have a mover?
I move that we accept it.
That application B5/2019 be granted?
The above decision is subject to the following conditions. To the satisfaction of the Secretary-Treasurer, that the Secretary-Treasurer be provided with the registrable legal description of the subject parcel, together with a copy of the deposited reference plan. That the application for consent B5/219 receive final certification of the Secretary-Treasurer concurrently with applications B3/219P and B4/219P. That the final certification fee of $387 be submitted to the Secretary's Treasurer. All costs associated with fulfilling conditions of consent shall be borne by the applicant. This decision is based on the following reasons. The application conforms to the policies of the Town of Pelham official plan, regional policy plan, and provincial policy statement, and complies with the town zoning bylaw. This decision is rendered having regard to the provisions of sections 5124 and 5125 of the Planning Act, RSO, as amended. The Committee of Adjustment considered all written and oral submissions and finds that the subject to the conditions of the provisional consent, this application meets Planning Act criteria, is consistent with the provincial policy statement, and complies with the growth plan, the Niagara Region official plan, and the town official plan.
All in favor?
Thank you.
Carried. Okay, and now. We're dealing with the minor variances, and I think we can deal with these concurrently also.
Through you, Mr. Chair, they are asking for different minor variances
Okay.
depending on the
One
file.
at a time. Let's start with A10, 2019. Holly, could you read the planning?
Application for minor variance, file A10/2019P, 36 Stella Street. Excerpts from planning report. The subject land shown as parts 1 and 8 on the attached sketch has 17.5 meters of frontage on the west side of Stella Street, lying north of John Street, known municipally as 36 Stella Street. The minor variance application requests relief from section 13.2B, minimum lot frontage, to permit a lot frontage of 17.5 meters, whereas 19 meters is required. Section 13.2C, maximum lot coverage, to permit a lot coverage of 40%, whereas 30% is required. Note, This application is being considered concurrently with minor variance files A11 and A12 2019P and consent application files B3 to B5/2019P. To date, the following comments have been received. Public Works, no comments. Building Department, no comments. Public, comments were received. Most of the public correspondence received dealt primarily with the subject matter of the severance applications. The correspondence did state concerns regarding the proposed lot frontage and keeping with the neighborhood. Lot frontages range from 18 meters to upwards of 25 meters. The proposed frontage for the existing dwelling at 36 Stella Street is 17.5 meters, with the two new lots both over 21 meters. Diversity in lot size and by extension dwelling size is not necessarily a negative quality for any neighborhood. Is the variance minor in nature? The proposed reduced lot frontage to 17.5 meters is minor in nature given the surrounding area. Smaller lot sizes are increasingly becoming common throughout the town, region, and province. The proposed increased lot coverage to 40% will allow for the continued accommodation of the existing single detached dwelling on a relatively smaller parcel of land. The variance is considered minor in nature. Is the variance desirable for the development or use of the land? Reducing the minimum lot frontage to 17.5 meters is desirable for the subject land because it will recognize the frontage shortfall and give legal status to develop the adjacent plot to the south for residential infill. The narrow frontage will also help to frame the edge of Pelham Street in a more compact fashion by lessening the large underutilized side yards between buildings. Increasing the lot coverage maximum to 40% is desirable because it will legalize the existing dwelling once the boundary is adjusted via severance. It also affords modest flexibility for additional building alterations or future structures on the site that would otherwise exceed the lot coverage limit. Does the variance maintain the general intent and purpose of the official plan? The proposed reduction in lot frontage maintains the general intent of the official plan because it will help facilitate intensification and increase housing supply within the delineated built boundary where underutilized lots otherwise stood. Planning staff is of the opinion that the amended lot coverage provision will not compromise any policy objectives of the official plan. Does the variance maintain the general intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw? The proposed lot frontage reduction is less than what is required by bylaw, but still includes a satisfactory frontage for access purposes and for maintaining the existing dwelling as the zoning bylaw was intended. The proposed increased lot coverage maintains the intent of the zoning bylaw because adequate room is still available for open space, amenity area, intentions, and stormwater runoff without unduly affecting any neighbors. Planning staff is of the opinion that the application meets the 4 minor variance tests laid out by the Planning Act. The subject application is consistent with provincial policies, the regional official plan, and complies with the general intent of the town official plan and zoning bylaw. Planning staff recommend that application file number A10/2019P be approved subject to the consent files B3 to B5 2019 being approved. The following conditions are suggested. The approval of the minor variance is subject to consent files B3 to B5 2019 being approved.
Any questions from the panel to the applicants? Do the applicants wish to elucidate on the application?
We're happy with staff's recommendations.
Any members of the audience? Mr. Whitaker, do you have any comments to make?
I don't. I mean, allowing more lot coverage means they can build a nicer house.
And you being a former builder.
Parcel already built.
Pardon?
I believe this is for parts 1 and 8 that's already built.
Yeah. That's right.
Do I have a mover and a seconder?
I move that we grant this minor variance because it's minor in nature the general purpose and intent of the zoning bylaw is maintained as the proposal leaves adequate room for open space and amenity area. The intent of the official plan is maintained as the variance will not compromise any policy objectives of the official plan. The proposal is desirable for the property as it provides flexibility for additional building alterations and future structures on the site. Yeah, this application is approved without prejudice to any other application in the town of Pelham. Committee of Adjustment has considered the written and oral comments and agrees with the minor variance report analysis and recommendation that this application meets Planning Act tests for minor variance. And the only condition we have, in which we've already approved, that we have to approve files B3 and B4 and 5. So moved.
Second. Second by Bernie Law. All in favor? Carried. We'll proceed to file A11, 2019, and I think we could probably do A12, 2019 concurrently, because they are both for the same sections of the bylaw. Except one is 700 square meters, or one is 625 square meters, and the other is 650, whereas 700 meters is squared is required. Would that be, is that?
Through you, Mr. Chair, these are for both of the new lots being created.
Yeah.
One,
Yes.
as you noted, has 625 square meters, one has 650.
Yes.
So if the committee is comfortable in dealing with the two lots together, then as long as you have separate motions for each one at the end, I would be satisfied.
I think we can do that.
Okay, thank you. Application for minor variance. Excerpts from planning report. The subject land, shown as parts 3, 5, 6, and 7 on the attached sketch, has 25.71 meters of frontage on the north side of John Street, lying west of Stella Street, known municipally as 36 Stella Street. The minor variance application requests relief from section 13.2A, minimum lot area, to permit a lot area of 625 meters squared, whereas 700 meters squared is required. Note, this application is being considered concurrently with minor variance files A10 and A12 2019 P and consent applications files B3 to B5/2019 P. To date, the following comments have been received. Public Works, no comments. Building Department, no comments. Public, comments were received. Most of the public correspondence received dealt primarily with the subject matter of the severance applications. The correspondence did state concerns regarding the proposed lot frontage and keeping with the neighborhood. Lot frontage actually ranged from 18 meters to upwards of 25 meters. The proposed frontage for the existing dwelling at 36 Stella Street is 17.5 meters, with the two new lots both over 21 meters. Diversity in lot size and by extension dwelling size is not necessarily a negative quality for any neighborhood. Is the variance minor in nature? The proposed reduction lot frontage to 17.3 meters. I apologize. I have the wrong. I'm going to move to the next application to see what I have there. Apologies. The proposed reduction lot area is minor in nature given the surrounding area. Smaller lot sizes are increasingly becoming common throughout the town, region, and province. The reduced lot area can still comfortably accommodate the proposed dwelling while maintaining an additional neighbor. Is the variance desirable for the development or use of the land? Reducing the minimum lot area is desirable for the subject land because it will allow for additional dwelling units to be erected on an otherwise fairly large residential lot. No adverse impacts are anticipated from this deviation of the zoning bylaw, and the variance will facilitate a more compact neighborhood by lessening the larger underutilized open space between buildings. Does the variance maintain the general intent and purpose of the official plan? The proposed reduction in lot area maintains the general intent of the official plan because it will help facilitate intensification and increase housing supply within the delineated built boundary where underutilized lots otherwise stood. The variance will aid in the gentle intensification of existing urban settlement areas and make more efficient use of the public infrastructure that exists. Does the variance maintain the general intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw? The proposed lot area reduction is less than what is required by bylaw, but still includes a satisfactory lot size for access purposes and for maintaining the proposed dwelling as the zoning bylaw was intended. Planning staff is of the opinion that the application meets the 4 minor variance tests laid out by the Planning Act. The subject application is consistent with provincial policies, the regional official plan, and complies with the general intent of the town official plan and zoning bylaw. Planning staff recommend that application file number A12/2019P be approved, subject to consent files B3 to B5 2019P being approved. The following conditions are suggested. The approval of the minor variance is subject to consent files B3 to B5 2019P being approved.
Might I add, we're dealing with both A11 and 12, so.
Yes, I will make note.
Okay. Any comments from our applicants? Any comments from the panel? Any questions from the panel?
No.
In that case, can I have a motion to deal with application A11, 2019, 36 Stella Street?
I approve the motion.
Okay.
I second it. You go ahead and say what.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I do note that they are the same. The only difference was the lot area.
Yes.
So the conditions and reasons are identical. It's just that you have different lot areas. So if you just include in your motion that both of the files are approved.
Okay, so both applications, A11 and A12, 2019, are being considered?
Yeah. So you move.
With
we
the
accept both files and I'll second.
Both
that.
files are,
Okay.
are whatever, one's for 625, one's for 650?
Yeah, or 675 or whatever,
Yep.
yeah. Okay, then.
Okay, the variance is minor in nature. The general purpose and intent of the zoning bylaw as the proposal still includes a satisfactory lot size for access and for maintaining the proposed dwelling. The intent of the official plan is maintained as the variance will not compromise any policy objections of the official plan. The proposal is desirable for the property and there are no adverse impacts anticipated. The application is approved without prejudice to any other application in the town of Pelham. The Committee of Adjustment considered the written and oral comments and agrees with the minor variance report analysis and recommendation that this application meets the Planning Act test for minor variance. The above decision is subject to the following conditions: that the approval of the minor variance is subject to the consent files B3 2019P, B4 219P, B5 219P being approved.
Well, let's have
And
a
I
vote.
second it, yeah.
You second it, John seconded. All in favor? Carried. And with that, we are done with the applications to be heard this evening. We have another item on the agenda for the consideration of the committee. That would be the minutes of the meeting of April 2nd.
No, I wasn't.
Bernie, you were not here, John, so do you move the acceptance of the minutes as prepared, Bernie? The minutes of Tuesday, April 2nd. The minutes of the meeting.
Yeah.
Just need a motion that they be
We need a
approved as
motion to
circulated.
accept the minutes of the meeting as prepared.
Okay.
Moved by Bernie Law, seconded by Don Cook.
Thank you.
All in favor? Bernie and I can vote. We vote favorably.
Thank you
Carried.
very
Motion
much.
carried. And with that, can I have a motion for adjournment?
I'll
Moved
make
by
the
John
motion.
Clausen, seconded by Bernie Law. All in favor? Carried.
that-
will turn off
if you
the
look at
microphones.
the deeds for Stella Street.
I will just turn off the microphones
Whoa,
in the
whoa.
recording.